Hello and welcome to this week's episode of #Leadership, What's on Your Mind? Remember, we're a podcast to make you stop and think about your leadership journey, and we're going to bring guests every Wednesday at 6 a.m. who have got amazing stories to share with you and expertise in their field. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe on the YouTube channel and you follow us on your podcast provider. So today we are speaking to Graham. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you.
Excellent. So I'm really excited about having this conversation because this has probably been a year in the making in my head. And Graham has recently agreed to come on. It's not like I've been chasing him for a year, but it really fits into that diverse conversation about leadership, because I thought, who are the people that I haven't had on yet who are interesting careers that do actually have quite a leadership role? So without further ado, and again, with our connection to Carden Park as well, I actually missed this opportunity. I thought, I need to get Graham on. He's got a wealth of experience in this field, and he's got a unique set of skills. So I'll let you introduce yourself without me being even more too cryptic. So as I hit the 20-minute timer, Graham, if you could introduce yourself to the people who don't know who you are and tell us a little bit about what you do. Off you go.
Okay, well, as you know, Stuart, I'm Graham Tinsley. I'm the executive chef at Carden Park. I'm also, as my unpaid work, the culinary director for the Culinary Association of Wales. So I'll give you a little bit of an insight into that side before we
go for it.
About work. I moved down to Wales about 30 years ago for job relations. And when I came to Wales, I found there was no association of chefs, caterers, cooks, anything like that. So I decided to create one. Got on the phone, phoned a few guys that I knew locally, and had our first meeting. And it grew and it grew and it grew. On the back of the Culinary Association, I was always interested in competitions. I love competitions, going head to head with other chefs, whether it's chopping a chicken up for sauté or making an omelette or doing some buffet decoration. So we decided to create a culinary team on the back of the Culinary Association. Now, in the early days, the culinary team was a regional team, because it had to compete against regions of Germany and regions of Spain and regions of America, Canada, all over the world. It wasn't a national team, because a national team status was held by Great Britain, just like with the athletics. Yeah. So for years, we had to prove that Wales was a country in its own right, so we could get national status, and that meant fighting against the English, who were the national team, as in Great Britain. Anyway, we got Prince Charles, our patron, and he wrote a letter to support this, and we got the Senate. It wasn't the Senate in those days, but we got the Welsh government to support us as well. And we went to the National Congress in Japan in 2002. To the World Association of Chef Societies, and we proved our point and we got national status. So from then on, from 2002, we competed against national teams. So we compete against America, and we compete against Germany and all the European teams, all the best teams in the world at the moment are the Nordics, all Scandinavia. They're absolutely amazing. And then come the big teams with lots of cash to throw at the teams like America and Canada. When we first started the team off, because I wasn't Welsh, I'm from St Helens in Lancashire, I decided that I would just be a team member. I thought the hierarchy, the manager, the team captain and the vice captain should really be Welsh. But it was eventually I became the vice captain, and I became the captain, and then in 2003 I became the manager. I left the association for a few years to concentrate on Carden, and then early on this year I've been asked to come back as the culinary director, looking after all the teams, not directly involved with the teams because I have managers looking after them, but I oversee them. I'm there for help and advice, and I'm just there as a bit of a guiding light, because I've been there and done it.
Excellent. I love that, because again, I was smiling through that because we've had a lot of sports people on the podcast talking about leadership and high performance and culture in teams. So we might pick up a little bit of that when we talk about the chefing and stuff. So excellent. Thank you so much for that. And that, I presume that's probably something that our listeners maybe don't even know about or aren't aware about. So it's a good one to give them that information and to look out for.
Yeah,
So.
the culinary competition scene is absolutely massive. It's not well known in this country, but we have a culinary Olympics. We have a culinary World Cup. So it's exactly in the same year as the Athletic Olympics, but held later on the year in October. The Culinary World Cup is this year, which is the same as a Football World Cup. That'll be held in Luxembourg in November. There's a culinary championships always held in Switzerland. The country has the right. It doesn't move around like the athletics and the World Cup. You don't bid for it. The country holds the right to these competitions for some political thing. But it does. They are massive. Asia Food in Singapore is great. The American Culinary Classic in Chicago. These are massive competitions, and they're televised. But it's just not well known enough in this country.
Yeah. There'll be more people knowing about it now. That's the good thing. So let's get back down to leadership. So we're obviously #leadership. What's on your mind? What comes to your mind with your background and your experience when you just hear the word leadership? What's it mean to you?
It means to me people who work for you really wanting to do the best for you. And what I mean by that is you're not going to get anybody that will do their utmost best if they don't respect you and they don't realise that you've been there and done it yourself. So the way I work with my team is, and I've had many teams over the whether it's been in work or it's been in the Welsh team, you prove that you can do it first of all, and then they will respect you, and then they will carry it forward. I'm not a bit of a bad lad in the kitchen. You know, I don't shout and scream. Maybe in the early days I may have done, but I want people to do the best and bring the best out of themselves, and for their progression as well. A lot of my boys and girls who've worked for me have gone on to do good things and better things, and whether it's in their own jobs or whether it's been in competitions. And you're only going to get that if you spend time with them and you nurture them.
Excellent. So staying with you personally, and you alluded to then a little bit of a transition from different leadership styles, but where do you think your leadership journey started? I love how far back some of our guests go, but the foundations, when did they start? So whether it was a light bulb moment at the time and you were like, right, I need to start leading now, or it's now I'm asking you and you're reflecting back. Where do you think, how far back can we go about where your leadership journey started?
Well, you're looking at people who've really encouraged you throughout your career. I was in a very special place when I became a head chef, because I was like fourth in line in the kitchen, and the head chef put his notice in, and there was two other guys ahead of me. But the manager must have saw something if the hotel must have saw something within me, and asked me to take on the position, leapfrogging two other people. So I really didn't have that that chance to work alongside somebody who could nurture me and tell me what to do, because I was never the next person to take over. So I had to learn everything by myself, really, and just grab the job with two hands and just carry it forward. There have been people who have supported me and helped me right through my career, because obviously I've been a chef in a kitchen for many years. But my first mentor would have been my brother, I would have thought.
Okay.
When I left school at 16, I was waiting to start work in the September at the Midland Hotel in Manchester. I had a couple of months spare before my job started, so I went to work with my brother, who was a builder. He had a building company in Lytham St Anne's, and I used to go and commie for him or labour for him, and he taught me how to make cement, and he taught me how to carry the bricks, and you know, he was always on my case. He was such a taskmaster. There's 20 years difference between us, So he was such a taskmaster, he was always on you, don't stand there with your hands in your pockets, make sure I've always got enough mortar, make sure that the bricks are facing the right way so I can do this. So that was my early recollection of someone sort of mentoring and teaching me. When I got my first job in Manchester, the Midland Hotel in Manchester, I had a proper apprenticeship scheme where you spent time on every single, you don't do it anymore, but you spent time on every single section in the kitchen. But there was like 110 chefs in the kitchen there. And the executive chef, or the head chef, there was no such titles as exec chefs then. The head chef then was a guy called Gilles Lefebvre, French guy. And again, he became not just my head chef, but once I left, he became a really good friend that I could always go back to him, ask what should be my next step.
Yeah.
And that's carried on all the way through, right? From the Dorchester with Anton Mosselman and until these days.
So I'm going to ask you to, so obviously I sometimes this happens when people say, and I think there's something maybe before that, because what do you think the reason was that you stepped up? Was it what you were talking to earlier about the standard of how you were performing, or was it something else that they saw in your people skills and communication that they wanted in the kitchen? Why did that leapfrog happen from your perspective?
I think I was the best candidate.
Right, okay.
Not being big-headed about it. I knew I was a very good cook. I moved into that kitchen when the other guys were already there, and I brought a complete different mindset to cooking.
Yeah.
They were very stagnated there. I'd come from the Dorchester in London. I wanted to move up north because I was getting ready for getting married. So I found a job in the northwest of England. And I brought a completely different mindset into the kitchen, which the manager must have saw,
Yeah.
Probably a little bit more respect in the ingredients, a bit more respect in the attitude of presenting food on a plate and looking after customers. And the manager he did see something in me, because he's again, I worked with him for many years after that. When he moved, I moved with him. And in fact, we opened Carden Park together.
Oh, fantastic. The reason I sort of mention that is because I think that's really good awareness on their behalf. Because again, how many times do we hear about a process of that's just how we do it here? And that's the next person in line. And it reminded me a little bit of that. The top salesperson gets the sales manager job. And go on, Sam.
It was very difficult because if you can imagine, you're stepping over two people to this position. There was a lot of resentment over that. And not just from the people that you step over, from some of the other people in the kitchen who automatically believed that if we call them the sous chefs, second in charge, the head sous chef should have got into the head chef's position. So there was like, well, this doesn't work. This is not how it's supposed to work in the industry. The second person moves up and fills that person's shoes. So there was a lot of resentment, but I had to build my own team from there. The other people fell by the wayside, not because I kicked them out or anything like that, but they just decided that it wasn't for them. The way I wanted to work wasn't the way they were used to working. And you build your own team. And that's been my forte all the way through my career. I think building a team, whether it's in the kitchen or whether it's with the Welsh team, is getting the right people behind you. And if we talk about the Welsh team, we were never the best cooks in the world. When I was the manager of the team about 7 years ago, we were never the best cooks in the world, but we were a great team. We looked after each other. We've watched everybody's back. If we saw somebody wasn't having the best day, then we would look after them and we would nurture them and we would help them and everything. But we weren't a team of individuals. We were a really good connected team. And I think that's what helped us to get to where we were. Because if you think, you have the world standings, and it runs from one Olympic. It's like tennis, it goes from one year, one competition to the next. Well, this cycle is from the Olympics to the Olympics. And in those 4 years, you get a world ranking. Now, we got to 7th in the world. And for a little country like Wales with 3 million people, being able to pick handpick these chefs. Getting 7th in the world was amazing, and it was great for our sponsorship as well. So it just showed how strong we were as a team and not a team of individuals.
Yeah, I like that. And how often have we heard that in football, for example, going back to sport, the individual over the team ethos. So we're rapidly running out of time. Let me ask you about the reason why I really wanted to speak to somebody in the culinary world. It's that whole mentality of, a bit like in business, when you're the CEO and it's your business, so you're the founder, for example, but then you're in the kitchen and it's your name above the door, and it's like you at Carden Park, you're head of the team, but ultimately it's the team that are delivering. How are you setting those standards? And we said about your performance, but how are they? Tell us a little bit more about how you get an effective team in the kitchen. What's the communication look like? What are the learning moments? How are we allowing team members to fail, learn, develop? What does that look like? Because again, going back to celebrity chefs and stuff, you do hear that shouty. The celebrity world of chefing now is quite open, and we see little snippets, but it's not how it is all the time, or it might be. You tell me. What's it like in the kitchen? Tell us about it.
The best way to describe it is quite regimental. In the kitchen, you have your hierarchy going up from your apprentice chefs, your commis chefs, your chef de parties, which is a chef who runs a section, and then your sous chefs, who really, they're the guys who kick butt in the kitchen. And the learning curve is pretty straightforward, really, because we have SOPs, we have our recipes, we have our check sheets, and the most important thing is we will always have somebody on the hot plate making sure that the food is going out correctly, to the way and to the standard and to the photographs. Every section in the kitchen will have the recipes, they will have photographs of the dishes. We're not in a unique place where we can actually shut down and do any training. We are open 365 days, 365 days a year.
Last few days. We added a few days to the year.
We can never stop. We can never shut down and actually do any training. Our training is always on the job. So the chef de parties and the sous chefs will look after the commis and apprentices and bring them through, and go on to the sections for a little bit and do a little bit of one-to-one with them. But our hot plate is sort of our line, where everything comes across, and it's judged at that point, and it's either, no, you've got too much sauce on there, or you need a little bit more garnish or whatever. But really, if you follow the recipes and you follow the photographs, then everything should be correct.
Yeah, we've only got about 3 minutes left. I've got so many questions I want to ask you. So I love that, because on the face of it, obviously from a military background, process driven, I was going to ask you about how do you make that then personable and add the people skills and the soft skills of not being robots. But then on the other question, so I've got a double-ended question here. But then I love the fact that you're always training on the job, because when we speak to companies and businesses and teams, I haven't got enough time. I can't take time. I'm busy. They're wearing busy as a logo. So how do you find that time to learn on the job? So open to you. 2 questions there. Sorry.
Right, well,
excited.
The first one: how do we get other people's imagination into the dishes, that we bring them together? So if we're creating a new winter menu, then we'll come up with some ideas and say, guys, what do you think? Does it need a little bit more of that? So you also try to encourage them by them bringing the ideas forward. It's not all, they're not every single dish that is on every single menu in Carden Park is mine. It couldn't work like that, because you've got to encourage them for their growth as well. Yeah. And then what was the second question?
Second question was like wearing busy as a label sometimes in the
jumping on it. We would just have to jump on the section and just stand with them for a bit. And yesterday I've got a new boys. He's only his second time on the veg section, and he wasn't sure how to make the soup of the day. So I got on there and I just went through every single stage with him, and this is what you're doing. And here's a recipe that you follow in future. But it's all right giving a piece of paper, but there's nothing like that little bit of leadership or that little bit of mentorism on the section, showing them this is what you do, this is what you watch for. Because a piece of paper isn't isn't the be all and end all, because ingredients change. You have to taste, you have to use all your senses. And this is what I say to the boys all the time, you know, you've got to use all your senses in cooking. You've got to taste, you've got to smell, you've got to see, you've got to feel, you know, so just by following a recipe isn't going to work all the time.
Yeah, I love that as well, because I always go on about this self and situational awareness, and almost I'm asking a CEO or a team just to be more aware of what's going on around you. And I can directly correlate that to you using all your senses in the kitchen. You're going to pick up more, aren't you, and be able to adapt and change and action things. So I love that. So last question, because we've got about a minute left. Obviously, you're developing your skills all the time. Like, how do you keep learning? Because of all the experience you've got. The advocate for saying the leadership journey is never over. Like, how are you pushing yourself forward and learning and developing?
Well, it's so easy now, isn't it? You know, we've got the internet, we've got YouTube, we've got podcasts, we've got videos, we've got the TV. It was, you know, I used to spend maybe 2 hours a day, an hour traveling to work and an hour traveling back on the train with a book, reading recipes, reading culinary French techniques and things like that. Now the world's your oyster. You can get on your mobile phone, you can find a recipe just by Googling, can't you? I'll be going off to Luxembourg with a junior team next month. So I'll be networking with other chefs from all around the world. I'll be looking at all the dishes from all the 30 teams that I've been competing at the World Cup, you know, and I'll be planning my next competition, which will be in May in Dubai. I've got to take a junior team over to Dubai. So I'll be sort of looking at what current trends are in other countries and what they're doing. Ready for that. Sounds terrible. I think you need somebody to come and help you taste these menus. Well, you're always welcome. You're on the doorstep.
Great. Thank you so much for your time today. And it goes without saying, people listening to this, if you want to actually get closer to this, obviously Carden Park, what an amazing place to go and even get closer to what this standard of food is. I keep getting pestered a little bit by Mrs. Waddington to take her to Carden Park to eat, so we might have to sort that out. So Graham, thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome.
Ladies and gents, if you enjoyed that, I always say, let me know which bit was relevant to you, why it was relevant to you, and some of the bits that you can take away from this episode. Every Wednesday, 6 a.m, we've got amazing people coming your way. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow us on your podcast provider. Graham, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you all next week, ladies and gents. Bye.